Tonight, terror teardown.
This entire city is one big terror base.
Israel's advance on Gaza City, destroying the Hamas terror network's infrastructure. Plus,
my community was butchered.
CBN News speaks to the brother of 2 of the hundreds of hostages held captive by Hamas. And election 2023, what the surprise results mean for 2024. And new polls show bad news for President Biden.
I think these are very, very worrying numbers that Democrats have to take very seriously.
All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. The future of Gaza once the war is over. Thanks for joining us for Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And good evening in Washington. I'm Jenna Browder. What happens to Gaza after Israel's war against Hamas ends? A picture is beginning to emerge.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu proposed to have Israel control Gaza's security as fighting intensifies in the center of Gaza City. Details on Netanyahu's exact plan are scarce. The White House already warned Israel against what Biden officials call a reoccupation of the territory, calling it wrong, while noting security measures will need to be taken.
What I've heard from Israeli leaders is that they have no intent to reoccupy Gaza and retake control of Gaza. So the only question is there some transition period that might be necessary, and what might be the mechanisms that you could put in place for that to make sure that there is security. But we're very clear on no reoccupation, just as we're very clear on no displacement of the Palestinian population.
The United Nations estimates about 70% of Gaza's population has been displaced since the war began.
When Hamas terrorists struck Israel a month ago, around 240 people were kidnapped, many still being held hostage in Gaza.
And as the pleas for their release echo around the world, their families experience unimaginable pain and suffering. At the U.S. Capitol this week, some of the relatives joined lawmakers to share their stories.
Yeah, Liron Berriman was among them. His 26-year-old twin brothers were taken on October 7th. Earlier today, we sat down with Liron to hear what this last month has been like for those with family members being held hostage by Hamas.
Liron, can you tell us about your brothers, Ziv and Gali? What is it that you want people to know about them? And if you could get a message to them in captivity, what is it that you would tell them?
Okay. My brothers, Ziv and Gali, they have what we call twin power. They are the center of attention wherever they go. They are the light of every party they are entering. Among us, the family, and among the group of friends. They are at that age, 26, which is they have no obligation other than themselves. They work and they travel around the world, and they watch soccer, and they love to party. Yeah.
How are you and your family doing emotionally, physically, spiritually?
Our life is separated pre-7th of October and after. Now my family is very strong. We are holding together, and we are with each other. There are no upside days. There are no joy, or there is laughter, but it's a dry laughter. Most of the days we are occupying ourselves with regular stuff just to keep going. And this is what everyone told us. Don't think ahead. Don't think about 2 weeks from now, about a year from now. Think about today and tomorrow. Always be in today and tomorrow. Do stuff for today and tomorrow. And my family is very strong. And we are holding together, and we have the community with us that helps us. But we have, it's been a nightmare, so we have our days of sorrow. But most of the days we are like on a level of doing.
And it's you and it's your two parents Your twin brothers were abducted, and then you have one other brother.
Yes.
Your parents and that brother, they were spared.
Yes.
And you were living in a different kibbutz up north.
Yes.
But they were all in that same kibbutz.
Yes. I was born in kibbutz Kfar Aza 36 years ago, and all my 3 other brothers were born there. The whole family lived in kibbutz Kfar Aza up until the 7th of October. They were rescued, evacuated by the IDF from the kibbutz. My parents first on the midnight of Saturday, and Idan, my second brother, was evacuated by the IDF on Sunday afternoon. Now they are in a safe place with the sister of my mother, and the community there is taking good care of them. They are doing okay now.
Liran, I want to give you an opportunity. I see the necklace that you're wearing. It says, "Bring them home now," in both Hebrew and in English, but I know you brought a poster in. If you'd like, you can hold it up. When you look into the faces of your brother, what is it that you think, and what is it that you would want to communicate to them now in captivity?
I want to say to them that we miss them very much. We want them home. We need them home. We love them. We love them very, very much. They are missed by a lot of people. A lot of people want them back, all the hostages. We need them home. We need them home yesterday, but as soon as a deal can be break, we need them home.
Speaking of a deal, without compromising any sensitivity, how much is the Israeli government keeping you up to date on what's going on with the hostages? And speaking of the hostages, you know, there's a lot of talk about a pause or ceasefire. I wonder if you have any concern with the military ground campaign in Gaza and that potentially harming the safety of the hostages, including your brothers.
So, first of all, I'm not came from the Israeli government or anything. I'm not a political person. I trust the government and I trust the IDF that they know that right now they're on the ground in Gaza and they do whatever they can to keep the hostages safe. We hope, we don't know with 100% guarantee that the IDF knows exactly where the hostages are, but they know enough not to bomb there and not to enter there and not to take advantage of the situation. And I trust the Israeli government to do what it can do in the diplomatic affairs. So whatever comes first, either the IDF on the ground or the Israeli government diplomatically to release all the hostages. It's hard to say, but I'm not a political, it's not a political agenda of the government, but I think that a ceasefire will do harm more than good. I think we need to put pressure on Hamas. They are a terrorist organization. They are not a government. They govern the Gaza Strip, but they are a terrorist organization. And the more pressure that we put on them, either military or diplomatic, the more chances that they will release the hostages, whichever comes first.
Liran, over the weekend, protesters marched in Washington in what was called a pro-Palestinian march, and there were protests, these same protests all over the country that day. I wonder what you think when you see these images and you see some of the things you hear some of the things they're chanting.
It saddens me. I don't know their mindset, why they're doing what they're doing. These are civilians. My brothers are civilians who got kidnapped from their beds on Saturday morning. They have no military officiant. And those are just my brothers. They are babies and elderly who got kidnapped from them home, from their safe places. I can't understand the mindset of the protester. It really saddens me to see this and to hear this. We are regular civilians who got caught between a terrorist organization and we hope that there will always be people against us. There will always be. I'm not talking to them. I'm talking to the regular people on the fence of not knowing. Please, these are civilians who got kidnapped from their home. They are not in any way connected to the fighting going on, to the war. They need to be home. They need to be home yesterday, and we need them back. If you are on the fence, then please listen to this.
Liron, you, your brothers, and all of the hostages and their families are in our hearts and in our thoughts, and we're pleading as well for them to come back safely.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And according to Axios, President Biden has told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu a 3-day pause in fighting could help facilitate the release of hostages.
Well, is the United Nations anti-Semitic? That question addressed today by Congress.
Now, lawmakers heard testimony on what some are calling rampant anti-Semitism and systematic anti-Israel bias at the world body. Dale Hurd reports.
The hearing focused on one agency in particular, where UN employees openly celebrated the October 7th attack on Israel. In its new report, the group UN Watch documents how 20 teachers and staff members with UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, rejoiced over the massacre of Israeli civilians in their social media accounts.
Allah is great. Allah is great. Reality surpasses our wildest dreams, posted UNRWA Gaza teacher Osama Ahmed.
UN Watch Executive Director Hillel Neuer told the Subcommittee on Global Health, Global Human Rights, and International Organizations that the celebration of the attack by UNRWA staff should not have been a surprise, considering what was already known about the agency's association with Hamas.
UNRWA staff regularly call to murder Jews and create teaching materials that glorify terrorism, encourage martyrdom, demonize Israelis, and incite anti-Semitism.
Middle East expert Dr. Jonathan Schanzer.
UNRWA employees have been exposed as members of Hamas, the terrorist group that slaughtered 1,400 Israelis in cold blood on October 7th. This might explain how UNRWA's educational materials refer to Israel as the enemy, teach math by counting martyred terrorists, and include the phrase jihad as one of the doors to paradise in grammar lessons.
Neuer says that since the Hamas massacre, the overwhelming majority of statements by UN bodies and officials have pointed the finger at Israel, following a pattern there in which Israel is held to a standard not applied to any other nation.
At the UN General Assembly last year, there was one resolution on Iran, one on Syria, one on North Korea, and 15 on Israel. 0 resolutions were adopted on China, Venezuela, Zimbabwe, and 180 other countries.
There is no question that certain UN member states, bodies, and the General Assembly have a negative, disproportionate focus on Israel and routinely support singling it out more than any other country in the world.
In 2022 alone, UNRWA received $344 million in funding from the United States. This for an agency that experts say includes staff members who clearly support Hamas. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Thank you, Dale. Well, big wins for Democrats and abortion advocates. Coming up, we break down the off-year election results and look ahead for what they mean in 2024.
Welcome back. The results of Tuesday's off-year elections gave a boost to Democrats who came out on top of many of the races. In Kentucky, Andy Beshear defeated his Republican challenger to hold on to the governor's mansion, and a big blow to the GOP in Virginia, where Democrats swept control of both the House and Senate. In Ohio, the pro-life movement faced a big loss after voters there approved a ballot measure enshrining access to abortion in the state's constitution.
This campaign came together last year because we lost access. There was no choice. We had to win. We had to end the ban. Winning was our only option, and we did it together.
Abby Johnson is a former Planned Parenthood director turned pro-life advocate, now the CEO of And Then There Were None. And Abby joins us now. Abby, welcome. So I'd like to start by just getting your reaction to this measure in Ohio and what was a big loss for the pro-life cause.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say that this is too unexpected. You know, there was a vote earlier a few months ago, and that was a huge failure as well. I hope that this is a lesson to conservative voters and particularly Christian voters. The bulk of Christians don't get out and vote. And there a lot of, I think the majority of Christians aren't even registered to vote. And so, you know, we have a problem in the Christian community. We're not voting. We're not registering to vote. We're not making sure, we're not holding people accountable to get out and vote. And I think we're just taking it for granted that Christians are doing their civil duty of getting out and voting for things that matter to us.
This is a complicated issue, it seems like, even among Christians. So, you know, Lila Rose, president of Live Action, said in a statement, the pro-life movement must adapt to win. We have to throw out the old playbook and dive headfirst into a strategy that can win the hearts and minds of the American people. So, twofold question, does this change the approach of the pro-life movement, and what does the new playbook look like?
Well, I mean, people say it's complicated. I don't think it's complicated at all. I mean, we're talking about the murder of innocent human beings, and I don't know when murder has ever been complicated. Murder has always been wrong. Murder of innocent human beings has just always been wrong. And for some reason, we're making it really complicated, but it's just not. And I think one of the reasons that we continue to fail is because the pro-life movement keeps compromising. Instead of just saying, "Hey, look, we're not gonna settle at 15 weeks. We're not gonna say that life doesn't have value, up until 15 weeks, and then, well, at 15 weeks you can't have an abortion, but up until 15 weeks you can." Or, well, we believe that, life has value, but if the baby was conceived in sexual assault, well, then it doesn't have value. We have to remain consistent. And, that is something that myself, Lila, Kristen Hawkins, many female leaders in the pro-life movement have been saying for a long time. We cannot be inconsistent. And I think that is a strategy that many of us need to start vocalizing and really gathering more people under that strategy.
All right, Abby Johnson, CEO of And Then There Were None. Thank you, Abby, for joining us this evening.
Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
1 year away from picking America's next president. Why new polling could spell trouble for the current commander-in-chief. Next on Faith Nation.
Welcome back. Less than a year until the 2024 presidential election, and according to new polling, things are not looking too good for President Biden and his re-election campaign.
That's right, Jenna, and it has some Democrats broaching whether the nearly 81-year-old should step aside.
CBN chief political analyst David Brody has that story.
Throughout his presidency, Joe Biden's poll numbers have not been great, and this past week it got even worse. The respected New York Times Siena College poll shows if the election were held today, Biden would lose a general election matchup to former President Trump in these 5 key battleground states. He trails by 11 in Nevada, 6 in Georgia, 5 in Arizona, 4 in Pennsylvania, and 5 in Michigan. Bradley Honan heads a top Democrat polling firm.
I think these are very, very worrying numbers that Democrats have to take very seriously.
Across the board, the numbers are bad. Voters say they trust Trump over Biden on the economy by more than 22 points. 71% say the 80-year-old Biden is too old to be effective, including 54% of Democrats. Only 39% say the same about the 77-year-old Trump. Biden's support is also down quite a bit among Gen Z, Hispanic, and Black voters, all key parts of his base. Top Democrat pollster and strategist Cornell Belcher says all of this is being overblown.
Look, I worked on both of the Obama campaigns. In 2011, it was the same polling that had Obama, down in multiple battleground states, losing to Mitt Romney.
Belcher also points to other factors. Nobody knows quite what the electorate makeup will look like. He adds the positive numbers Trump sees could be as good as it gets, which is good news for Biden.
He's at his ceiling. Biden is at his floor. And I think that is a difference.
Talk now has turned to whether Biden should step down. But what are Democrat insiders saying?
There's a lot of chatter right now in Democratic circles expressing real concern about this polling. I even have people in my ear whispering about whether it's time to dump Biden and find another nominee.
David Axelrod, a key architect of President Obama's White House runs, suggested Biden may want to think of stepping aside, writing the following on social media, quote, "This will send tremors of doubt through the party. Only Joe Biden can make this decision. What he needs to decide is whether that is wise, whether it's in his best interest or the country's. Yes, there also is risk associated with changing course now, but there is a lot of leadership talent in the Democratic Party poised to emerge."
I love David. He's a friend, but I can't believe the statement by David because he knows better.
Belcher says Axelrod knows that campaigns are built to solve problems, and that should be the focus.
You've got to cobble back together and energize these younger, more diverse voters to engage in the process, or you have an electorate that benefits Republicans.
That cobbling back needs to happen soon, or it may be too late. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
Thanks, David. The legacy of the Smithsonian giant pandas lives on. That's next on Faith Nation. Finally tonight, a farewell to the beloved Smithsonian National Zoo pandas.
The pair of pandas are returning to China after spending over 20 years in the capital city. The popular giant panda camp now permanently offline, but their legacy lives on. The pair will take part in the giant panda breeding program in China. Zookeepers say the population is growing. Today, the pandas took off on a FedEx flight, 19 hours, I understand, for China, called the Panda Express, fully stocked with 300 pounds of bamboo. Safe travels to them.
Did you see the plane? It had a panda on the side of it.
I love it. Thanks for watching.